G'day guys, welcome back to SuperCoach for DR and welcome to the 2021 season review. Yep, just like that, it's all done and dusted. SuperCoach season is over and what a season it was, from the COVID situation to injuries, laid out, suspensions, concussions, and even the bye round drama with the changing fixture with Richmond and West Coast. You name it, we had it this year in 2021. A really challenging year, probably the most challenging year I can remember since playing the game. So congratulations, firstly, just for getting through. There was a lot of drama, but at the same time, I think it was a lot of fun. Big congratulations to SuperCoach Mama for taking out the overall prize, and congratulations to anyone. It doesn't matter if you've finished around the 40k mark or even above that. As long as you've had fun, that's what this game is all about at the end of the day. And if you didn't get a good rank again, I'm sure that you'll come back bigger and better than ever next year in 2022. But the structure for today's video is that I'll obviously take you through what the final side looks like. I'll talk about my good trades, my bad trades, the lessons learned, and obviously give some special thanks towards the end of the video. But look, my season, yeah, it went pretty well. The overall rank was 184, so there were some stages during the season where I thought, I won't make the top 1k. Then once I got within that, the goal was the top 500. Once I ticked that off, it was the top 250. And really anything above that for me was going to be a real bonus. I've been playing the game for about 15 years now, and this is my 4th highest rank. So yeah, pretty proud of that, particularly during a really tough season. The total score was 52,648. So again, would have been nice to hit that 53,000 mark, but top 1%. Yeah, still pretty happy with that at the end of the day. So that's pretty much it for the intro. Oh, look, I did win 4 out of 5 grand finals. Thank you to everyone that did participate in any of my leagues this season. Had a lot of fun, fantastic banter, and just full of great people. That was wonderful. And I forget who won the cash leagues. I'll have to work that out. I took out one of them, but I'll have to work out who took the other one. I'm pretty sure it would have been Arthur, and I will be in contact this week to deliver all of the prize money. So congratulations to everyone that did win some sort of a prize in any of the leagues that I was involved with. But yeah, that's it for now, guys. Let's get into it and let's see what the final side actually looks like. So this is the final version of DR's Rusty Spoons for 2021. You will notice that I do have 7 premiums in defence. I wasn't that lucky to have an extra one sitting on the bench there, but I did notice that once lockout occurs in round 23, you can't switch around any players into different positions. So I did have Rory Laird playing as a midfielder for the majority of the season. But if we focus on the 3 guys here up the top, Lloyd, Short and Stewart, I all started with these blokes. So starting picks, so pretty successful given the fact I didn't have to trade them out. I could just leave them there, my D1 to D3. Seagull, I think, was a pretty successful pick. Look, he cost me 650k at the start of the year, so I did overpay for him. I knew that I'd be most likely overpaying slightly, but at the end of the day, he was still one of the most consistent defenders this year. 107.8, I'd pegged him for 110 plus, just based off his history. I didn't think that Dawson would affect him as much as he did. He did miss the one game, obviously round 22, which hurt me a little bit, but overall, I think a pretty successful pick, and I'll be locking him in, I think, next year at about 575 to 580k. I'm not exactly sure on those prices, but yeah, I just think that he's going to be another safe selection because we won't be able to select Rory Laird, the Callum Mills of the world. So yeah, I'm locking in Seagull at this stage next year. Short, was he a successful pick? Look, I'm not too sure. I may have overrated the pick at the start. I thought it would be close to 100 to 105 for a season average, so 98.3, almost got to 3 figures, but he was a bit of a roller coaster, good one week, not so good the next. I think that Hooley may have affected him a little bit more than what I first thought, so do you keep that in mind going into next year? Is he a viable starting selection? Look, I won't be starting him at this stage, but look, I'd say he's just probably a par pick, maybe just a bit below par for me, but that may have been my expectations. I'm not too sure, but an okay year from Jaden Short. Tommy Stewart, so a real model of consistency this year. Really missed out on his scores last couple of weeks. Copped a donut in round 22. Just managed to cover him in round 23. But apart from those last 2 weeks, he was just a terrific pick. Got towards 600k at one stage of the season. Had a bit of a quiet patch, some really hot patches, but overall, pretty consistent. Had a great role in SuperCoach, took a lot of the kick-ins, that intercept type defender, a lot of points there. Really controversial week where what did he break the record, I think, for intercept marks and got around a 120. So I don't want to revisit that. I think really ripped off there. So that season average could have been a little bit higher, I think. But at the end of the day, a really successful pick. Look, I'm going to track his injury, see how he's going in the preseason. But yeah, it's put me off slightly. But if he's fit and firing and ready to go, yeah, may sit along Jake Lloyd next year in my starting side, I think. Now on to the blokes that I actually traded in during the season. So Whitfield, Ridley and May, really disappointed with Lockie Whitfield. So traded him in just after the buys. And I was expecting a good 100 plus average, maybe 105 plus from him, but just did not deliver. He'll be really cheap going into next year. Lots of people will be tempted, including myself. But at this stage, I just don't want to look to go there. Just super, super disappointed. And apologies, in the stock market video, I said this bloke is an absolute no-brainer. Trade him in. He will deliver. Yeah, and look, that says it all. 68 to end in round 23. Super, super disappointing. He did deliver a couple of really nice scores while I did have him. But overall, yeah, very below par. So not a successful trade-in for me, Lockie Whitfield. Jordan Ridley, so I brought him in really early on in the year. I think it was round 3, just before round 3, before the price changes. And look, this was looking like absolute gold. You know, he was on fire at the start of the season. I was thinking 120 average from Ritters. Here we go. But then obviously got concussed. And we know the story. You know, missed a week, came back, just didn't look his usual self. Lost those kick-ins. He was the kicking king, you know, going at over 90%. But then Heppel came back into the side, you know, Redmond, Laverde. Yeah, just really, really frustrating with Ridley. But he did bounce back at one stage, I think for about 4 or 5 weeks, hit the 100 plus. We thought, here we go again, but then some disappointing scores thrown in as well. And 80, pretty disappointing to end the season. But next year, Jordan Ridley, he'll be at an okay price. You know, the same price as someone like a Jaden Short. I'll probably not start him. Maybe an upgrade target. We'll see how he goes. But really disappointing that he did lose that role towards the, mid-stage of the season, maybe just before that mid-stage of the season, but still a really, really great selection, I think, going forward in SuperCoach in the years to come, but maybe a wait and see for me next year. Now, Stevie May, I'd call this a pretty successful selection because I got him around the 400k mark. Should have been a little bit cheaper, but the week before I got him, he got some ridiculous score and almost matched his break even. But at the end of the day, he delivered when I needed him to deliver. There were times, though, unfortunately, because he was a pretty pottish type selection, I think in around 10% of sides, maybe pushing 13%, I'm not too sure from memory, but yeah, there were games where I was relying on a pretty decent score and he went around the 60 to 80 mark. But I think for a stretch of about 5 weeks, similar to Ridley, when he came back to form, he was looking absolutely magnificent. You know, 100 plus, had a pretty good role because he was that intercept type defender with Lever sharing that role, but he took a large majority of the kick-ins. So I think that's why he was an okay pick. And what's his average? 90.5 for the year. Take into account that he did have a couple of injury-affected matches there, which is why I was able to pick him up at such a cheap price. But out and out, you know, for what I got him with I think, yeah, a pretty decent selection. I think Stevie May. And Jimmy Madden, I could swing him with Briggs with that ruck forward DPP swing. So again, a couple of games where I really needed him. He played on field, which was handy. Other times, such as round 22, when I was looking at copying those 2 donuts, he didn't end up getting up for me. So a bit of a dead rookie towards the end of the season. But yeah, pretty good rookie pick, I think, for me with that DPP. Now on to the big boys in the midfield. So Jack Mcrae, a wonderful, wonderful selection. I'll talk about this in my lessons learned, but lesson learned, just start with this man. I can't believe I didn't start with him. I think it was about round 11 where I ended up trading him in. That was far too late by that stage. I was just behind the pack, all those people that started or brought him in nice and early. But at the same time, when he did come in, just didn't let me down. Was my captain for many weeks. I reckon it would have been 8 weeks. I had him as my captain or vice captain, used him within that loop and took his score. So he's an absolute gum. You look at his history. I'll talk about his history in my lessons learned. But yeah, just an absolute out and out star. A SuperCoach gun. Should be all Australian, I think, as well, Jack Mcrae. Yeah, a brilliant season from him. Thank you very much for everything you've done, Jack. Tommy Mitchell, a 127. After the buys, this bloke was absolutely phenomenal. As you can see, I ended up trusting him with my captaincy in the last round. 127 was okay, better than the 113 I had from Mcrae. One of the only times he let me down when I actually had him in the loop. But look, Titch, pre-buy, just wasn't fantastic. I had him for basically all the season. Brought him in for Dangerfield in round 2. So, yeah, it was a real roller coaster. Got those 140s and those 70 types, and I just couldn't work it out. I thought, he's getting the ball 30 times. Why is he getting a 70? It was due to his lack of contested possession. When he got that contested ball, got those clearances, then we saw his scores skyrocket, and he was just so consistent after the bye. Did not go below the ton, so one of my better selections. And if you had have got him, post-bye around that period, yeah, congratulations, he would have been a super, super trade-in. So at the end of the day, 117.2, that's okay from Titch. That's okay. This was looking like an absolute disaster of a pick. May have even traded him out if I had that luxury. Lucky for me that I didn't and kept the faith. But overall, yeah, a decent selection, I think, around par. Clary Oliver was one of my non-negotiable starting picks. I was starting him every day of the week. Put out a video on him pre-season as well about why I thought he'd be such a great selection. And at the end of the day, yep, absolutely fantastic. Again, ended the season with a bang, a nice 159. We had a 200 game from him where I had him as captain, which was absolutely fantastic. There were games at times where he got tagged or just, he still found the ball but didn't use it overly well. So a couple of 90 type scores, a period of about 3 weeks where he just wasn't giving us those monster scores or any decent type scores around the 90 mark. But then he has hit back every time we doubted him. So, yeah, really wrapped that I started with him, and I'm going to lock him in again next year. I think he will be our Brownlow medalist. Big fan of the pig, just absolutely love him. Zera, so 115 average on the season, similar to someone like a Rory Laird, and I will speak with... I'll quickly get to Laird because I forgot to speak about him. 116.2. Absolutely phenomenal. Just love this bloke. I'd pegged him for about 115 average at the best. Look at his season last year. Was it from about round 11, I think, when he started to play in the midfield? We saw that average skyrocket. I thought it would continue on into this year. He's been Adelaide's best midfielder by the length of the Flemington Straight, I think, and a very popular starting pick. I think one of the highest selected players at the start of the season, and that was for good reason. But yeah, having him in the midfield, look, it wasn't ideal, but if you look at his average, it's not like I was missing out too much on some of these other selections that I could have had, apart from the absolute uber elites in the mids as well. So yep, awesome from Rory Laird. But back to Zeret. A really consistent type season from him. Rarely went below the ton. When he did, that was disappointing, but at the same time gave us some monster scores as well. Do I regret starting with him? Well, I would have loved to have someone like a Steele or a Bond there, a Jared Lyons type even. But at the end of the day, he was okay. I'd call him a par type pick for me. Walsh, 117. It was a real breakout Uber season from him. When I say Uber, we're not talking Jack Mcrae, Clary Oliver, Jack Steele type numbers, but at the same time, 117 from average, that is absolutely fantastic. Might have been around 5 or 6 I bought him in, so he has been a really successful selection for me. The frustrating thing for me was that it seemed like whenever I had him in my vice captain or captain loop, he just wouldn't perform. Whenever I didn't have him in there, then he'd get one of those huge scores. But yeah, look, do we start him next year? He's certainly going to be someone I take a really close look at. So is he in my plans? Possibly. I will look at him anyway. Now, Josh Kelly, an interesting trade-in. I was patting myself on the back. This is one of those buy moves, and again, the buys are going to be part of my lessons for this year. But 107 average on the season. I got better, I think, than that 107. Maybe a little bit better, but did miss a game, rolled the ankle, which may have delivered a couple of, poorer scores for a few weeks after that. But at the end of the day, you live and die by your own sword, and this is one of those selections where I knew that he'd most likely miss a game because he's Josh Kelly, so that did hurt. But again, it was his ceiling, it was his change in role. I thought it was a good time to get him, given the fact that he didn't have another buy coming up. He'd already had his buy. So yeah, do I regret it? Probably, but he wasn't the worst trading, put it that way, that I'd had during the season. Trav Boak was certainly close to my worst trade-in. I'll talk about my worst trades and best trades in a minute, but a 134 to end. I really needed this because we had the Bont getting a 60-odd in round 23. Boak was, look, he wasn't a massive pod, but in my leagues anyway, he was a fair pod, and unfortunately didn't deliver in times of great need. But at the end of the day, 134 to end the season. That was pretty pleasing from him. Thank you very much. Bianco started the season like a house on fire. When I say house on fire for a rookie, that 70 type average, high 60s. But yeah, at the end of the day, 51.5, 28. I really needed a decent score from him to finish my season. Didn't give it to me, but it is what it is. Was really handy to have his DPP. For example, I used that and got Laird in the back line. Newcombe, yeah, on debut, he was an absolute machine. A couple of weeks ago, absolute machine again as well. But then got relegated to the medical sub, came on for a 7. But wish I had Bramble in place of him. Fife is a loophole I had from the start of the season. Didn't really need him or use him all that often. Yeah, not the best loophole. But it is what it is. Gave me that DPP when I needed it sometimes. And Saunders, I knew that he wouldn't get games. Brought him in as a bit of a strategic loop to use with Poulter. Didn't really need that again, mainly because Poulter just simply didn't get games. So there's your defence and your midfield. Tell me what you think. All right, we'll scroll down to the rucks and the forwards. So I might actually make this a little bit bigger. There we go. So, Max Gawn, Brodie Grundy. I was a massive preacher of the set and forget strategy this year. Now, was that a successful strategy? Well, 120.8 for an average from Gawn and 115.2 from Grundy. So, look, at the start of the season, Gawn was absolutely on fire. You know, those 140, 150 types. We were just locking him in as our captain or vice captain each and every week. But all of a sudden, another man emerged, Luke Jackson. So Luke Jackson was a big reason for Gawn's ceiling going down. And that 120.8 average, look, it's still up there with some of the best in the comp. But I thought that could be a 125 at least. And without Luke Jackson in the side, I believe that would have been the case. But going forward, this is a big problem, I think, with the Max Gawn selection. Now, we won't be paying anything like we'll be paying for him last season, I don't think. Or possibly we may, do we? I'll have to do the maths on that. I'm not too sure, but I'm not really interested in starting Maxi next year. Grundy, yeah, look, I blame COVID last year. But again, this year, 115.2, I needed that to be about 120 for an average. So very much below par. There were some games where he had didn't look interested or looked injured. I'm not sure what it was. Collingwood as a team just didn't perform. He didn't have the midfield that he's had around him in the last few years. Has that affected him? But I don't know. I just don't really have any great confidence with Grundy going into next year. It'll be a lot of reliance on what's happened in the past. I'm talking a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago. So with these two big boys next year, I don't think that I'll start with either one of them. And the set and forget strategy for me may actually be gone. I'm not too sure, but I'll talk about that maybe a little bit later on, or possibly for another video, I think. And Edwards I ended up bringing in as that DPP loop, just as that ruck forward. I would usually start with the ruck forward as that DPP to start the year, but end up going with Fife this year. Was that a mistake? Possibly, may have been. Onto my forward line. So the forward line was actually pretty decent. It looks pretty decent at the end of the year. So this man, Aaron Hall, I'll get to my best trades, worst trades, but I'll give you a sneak peek. Yeah, my best trade by an absolute mile. I love this bloke. Only went under the 100 once for me. Bought him in at about 420k, I think, from memory. But to end the season with a 139, we saw some massive scores from him around the 130s, 140s. And again, one sub 100 score for me since I owned him. Absolutely fantastic. He's the seagull of all seagulls. Doesn't just love the 1-2s, but loves the 1-2-3s. I'll highly consider starting him next year. I think I even owe it to Aaron Hall. He's such a good man and has delivered for me in a big way this season, and a big reason for me managing to get a top 200 rank. So, yeah, the durability risk will always remain there. He will be over 30 going into next year. Will he keep that role? I'm not too sure. We saw what happened with Luke Mcdonald. I had him at some stages in my pre-season team reveals, but yeah, we know what happened with Mcdonald. Part of it, well, a lot of it was injury, obviously. But does he keep that role, Hall? If he does, and that looks like to be, it's guaranteed, I will highly, highly consider selecting him. Zorko, overall, was a pretty successful selection for me. Got suspended during the bye rounds, which really, really hurt. An extra 100 points around there would have been phenomenal. But, it gave me a really great, great stretch where we're talking some large, large numbers. Those numbers were sort of the best in the competition at some stage. But 109 as a season... as a 23 round score. Yeah, it was okay. And 109.4 as a season average. Again, yeah, it was better than what I thought he'd be. I thought maybe around that 100 mark pre-season, maybe even below that. So he did deliver this year, Dane Zorko. It was a frustrating pick at times, but I think it was okay. Marshall, 120. This was a great trade-in for me, apart from the fact that he missed during that, COVID, a tier 1 exposure site incident. But look, apart from that, yeah, he really, really delivered for me. There was one match, I think it was round 22, where he gave me around a 70 type, which was really poor when he played Geelong, but really bounced back for me. He gave me a really healthy average when I had him in the side. And, I used that trade well, I think, on Rowan Marshall. I will be locking this bloke in my starting side next year, possibly in the forward, possibly in the rucks. See how I go with my ruck situation. Jordan Degowee. So I forgot all about the NDHP factor and policy that I usually put in place, and I'm glad that I did that because, again, he was a really good trade-in. He was my second last trade-in, my last trade-in for the year, along with Rowan Marshall, and I think that I, again, used that trade-in well. Do you look to start him next year? Look, possibly. With that midfield role, we are getting him for an 85.2 average, and I did get him in. He did end up averaging me over 100 since I traded him in. So, yeah, at the end of the day, a pretty successful pick for me. Next year, we're always worried about that durability, those off-field issues that he has at times. But, yeah, given the fact that he was found not guilty during that court case, do we forgive him a little bit for that? Well, we may have to. There'll always be worries about that with Jordan Degowee, those off-field issues. But, at the same time, we do have to respect that average of 85.2. And when I say respect that average, respect the fact that that is pretty low for what he can produce if he continues in that midfield role. So it will be an interesting discussion during the off-season, Jordan Degowee, if we do start him next year. Danger, I bought him in, just under 500k. But he delivered some massive, massive scores. I didn't see this in him. I thought that his ceiling had diminished a little bit, but we saw some huge scores from him. Again, we saw that 21. Wasn't his fault, subbed out of the game. Really controversial incident there with Toby Green. But to end the season on the 73, that was a real low for him. But at the same time, for the average that he had since time of trading, if you take that 21 away, that was absolutely fantastic. Now, remember, I did start with Dangerfield in my midfield, so that was a poor starting pick, given the fact that I had to trade him out straight away, had to bring Titch in because of that suspension. Yeah, frustrating. So end up using a few trades on him because obviously I did bring him back. But when I did bring him back, yeah, it was okay, and I'm glad that I did, particularly at the price that I paid. Briggs, now talk about delivering. This man really delivered when I needed him last couple of weeks. So an 84 and 82 the other week where I did need him on field as well. Thank you very much, Briggsy. Really did come through. I hope that Brisbane go pretty hard and trade him in during the off-season. I've heard some whispers that we are looking at Mr. Briggs, so I'd love to see him in Lions colours next year. Zeeble was a wonderful starting pick, arguably my best starting pick. I was expecting him to maybe go up 150 grand and then move him on, but just kept him for the majority of the season. When I say the majority, geez, what am I talking about? For the whole season, for all of the season, and 107.6 an average. I don't think anyone saw this coming. Massive congrats to him. A terrific starting selection, Jack Zeeble, and just disappointing that he couldn't finish off his great work and play every game of 2021. But yeah, an inspired starting selection. And if you didn't manage to get him in, that would have really, really hurt you. You needed, I think, to have Jack Zeeble in your side. And Poulter, really disappointing, just lost his spot towards the end of the year. I thought I'd be really clever and, not trade this bloke when he was around 300, 350k and just use him as a really reliable rookie with DPP, because I knew during the end of the season that I would need some of these rookies to play on field for me. But it was just unfortunate. I didn't read that one right. Lost his spot and I just couldn't rely on him. So lost 100k. Yeah, I wish I had have had someone like a Bramble, but why I thought that I'd need him is he had that DPP forward status. And yeah, as we can see, Briggs, I needed him last round. It would have been really handy if he had have got some more matches, but it is what it is. Didn't end up going great with the Poulter selection, but that is how the side actually looks. So overall, I can't complain too much with a top 200 finish. Certainly some good trades and bad trades, which I'll get to now. So I'll go back right to the start of round 2 and see what I did trade-wise. So out was Dangerfield, as I mentioned before, in Mitchell. Then round 3, just before the price rises, I got cold fed on Lockenneal. Thought, look, things just aren't looking right. Doesn't look his usual self. I do need to move him on because remember he was at 721,000, so the most expensive player in SuperCoach. But I thought, I see a big price fall coming. Let's jump ship now. The other bloke I got rid of was Tommy Phillips, so absolutely terrible starting pick. I go back and I think to myself, why? I think it's because I needed someone around that price range, and I just talked myself into him. You know, what if, clutching at straws. This is what he did at Collingwood on the wing. Could he get a bit of inside midfield time? That was a big part of it. I thought that may be the case, but just wasn't in the end. So again, needed to jump ship on him. So in came Dusty Martin. He was on fire for the first couple of weeks. I thought this man is absolutely possessed. He's going to win another Brownlow medal. And the other man was Jordan Ridley, as I mentioned before. He was on fire as well. But unfortunately, those two selections, Ridley and Martin, just didn't work out. Dusty from that point was extremely disappointing. And what I was worried about not having Martin in the side was the fact that I think about 45% of coaches at that stage had him in the side. And he was just one of those players that I thought I have to get in because he's going to really hurt me. That was not the case at all. If you didn't bring him in, that's probably the best thing for you, I think. Cozzy and Chapman now. I'll talk about this in a little bit with my lessons learned with some of the rookies. Dow was a terrible selection. In came Waterman. Clark and Campbell out. Walsh, Mansell in. Walsh, I think that was a good trade in. Now, this is probably bringing me to my worst trading of the year, I think. So out went Dunkley and out went Heath Chapman. Now, with Dunkley going out, I could have basically picked any player that I wanted at this stage. And what did I do? Well, I ended up going with a high-price rookie in R2 and save a little bit of money and go with Brayshaw. I should have just gone an uber premium here, not stuffed around. But I did. I tried to save money. I tried to get a little bit fancy and just did not work out there. So probably, right up there with my worst trades of the year. That was absolutely terrible there. So R2 at 175. I thought playing for North Melbourne, the back line, that would be a really good role. He'd be safe. They trade him in from Collingwood. I thought that security would be okay, but I didn't see Aaron Hall coming through like a steam train, and I think that was a big reason for R2 not getting games. But disappointing there. Then out went Butts and Golden. Golden I thought would get a lot more from him. Started the season really well. I didn't actually get his round one score or Jimmy Rowe's round one score, so swings and roundabouts there, I suppose. But Butts, he was a pretty solid rookie for me. I started him at D7 and, D6. He was actually on field, I believe, Butts. So, I sort of had to go with someone at a high price range, given the fact there were no great rookies down there. And he did his job. A couple of 90s and 100s, I think, just when I needed him. So that was really, really handy. In came Stevie May. Price was too good to refuse. And Nathan Murphy, that just didn't work out well. Ended up getting concussed. And, another story. Now, this brings me to my best trade-in of the year. So in round 9, out went Berry. I'd had enough of him. I thought, look, his ceiling isn't up there, getting me 40s and 50s type scores. Got to get rid of him. And Brockman just wasn't getting a game. He was a bit of a dead rookie at the time. So I thought, see you later, Tyler. You have to go. And in came Poulter. So short term, this was a really, really good selection because he got above the 300 mark. So this was a great trade-in at the time. I think I just need to trade him out at the ideal time, which I didn't. I ended up keeping him for the year, as I mentioned. But Poulter was a terrific selection, DPP, and Aaron Hall at 419,000. So I keep on mentioning this, and you've heard me say this 1,000 times, but only went below the ton once after round 9. So phenomenal from Aaron Hall. That was clearly my best trade-in, I think. So Berry and Brockman out, Hall and Poulter in. And Poulter delivered some really nice 70 type scores as well. So round 10, out went Powell and Mansell. Mansell, I didn't make much cash on, which was unfortunate. Powell, he was a terrific rookie for us, and I think that I traded him out at the ideal time. So that was a really good trade out, I think. In came Jones, really disappointing from Port. Injury problems, just never really hit his straps, unfortunately. And Dane Zorko. So this was another really good trade at 511. So getting rid of Powell at the ideal time, bringing Zorko in, that was absolutely terrific for me. Round 11, so Jordan, he'd done his job by then, I thought, 366,000. That was okay. Maybe I could have kept on to him. That would have been nice because he gave some other good scores. And Warner, I think he was pretty much cooked at this stage, 319. In came Jimmy Madden. I ended up using him on a few occasions. And Jack Mcrae. Now, Well, round 11, it took me to get Jack Mcrae. That's just not good enough. This will be my lessons learned, which I'll go through after I talk about the rest of my trades. But yeah, great trade in there, Jack Mcrae. Needed him. Was desperate to get him in. And then we get to the buy rounds. Now, I'm just going to talk about this lesson learnt now. And my lessons learned aren't going to be in any particular order, but lesson learned is prepare for the buys, but don't over prepare for the buys. Don't try to get too fancy and too tricky and worry about maybe 1 to 200 points during these rounds, because that's what I did. I really wanted to get a big leg up during the buy rounds on my opponents, on other people going for that overall prize, and it simply didn't work out well. I wasted a couple of trades, and I really wish I could take it back. The thought was there, but the execution wasn't quite there, I don't think. And when I say the thought was there, maybe I wasn't thinking right at this stage. But in round 12, out went Flynn, Scott, and Highmore. In came Bianco, Coleman Jones. Everyone was doing that at this stage. And I also brought in Josh Kelly. Now, the reason for bringing in Kelly was the fact that he was at a pretty good price, what he was averaging in the last 3 to 5 rounds. He'd swapped up that role. Remember, he was playing forward at the start of the season. Then, obviously, he'd gone right back into the midfield, playing in the guts. And I thought, given the fact that he's already had his bye, well, at this stage, I'll take that back. Round 12, I actually brought him in. So I brought him in knowing that I wouldn't have him playing that week. But I thought for the next couple of weeks, that is going to give me a bit of a leg up. So a bit of a strange strategy within that self. And Bianco and Coleman Jones, as I said, they were just shoo-ins at that stage. Everyone was bringing him in. I had to do that, so I certainly can't take that back. Now, Flynn out, that's okay. Would have been handy to keep onto him. Scott out's okay, and Highmore out. So I traded him out at 193k. And at the time, that was looking like just a super decision. But as we know, he ended up peaking at around 340k. He will be involved in my lessons learnt as well. So trade him out way too early, which was really unfortunate. Then we go to round 13. So out went Grundy. Obviously, he was injured. I was going to keep on to him, but I just thought, nah, during the bye rounds, I can't manage to keep him. I need an extra score in. So what did I do? I went out and I brought myself Zach Smith. Now, there was a little bit of bad luck here because he was concussed and then missed a week, and that cash gen wasn't where I thought it would be and predicted it to be, and it was looking like it was going to be okay and he was going to do his job, but that didn't work out. But what on earth was I thinking, bring in Zach Smith? Again, too fancy. An absolute dud of a ruckman from Gold Coast in place of Grundy, who I knew was going to come back in the next 2 to 3 weeks. It was simply the wrong move at the time. I wanted a warm body during a couple of those bye rounds, and yeah, just unfortunate. So yeah, really bad trade there. Out was Rowe. It was time to trade Rowie out, so no regrets there. Newcomb at the time, that was great because I need him to play that week of trading, and he delivered a really nice score on debut, which was cool. And then Murphy, he was out, bought him in a few weeks prior to that from Collingwood, so that was disappointing. And then Whitfield at 500k, yeah, just did not deliver, as I mentioned before when I was talking about him. Absolutely terrible. So we look at these trade-ins so far: Kelly, Coleman, Jones, Bianco, Whitfield, Newcomb, and Zach Smith. Yeah, not terrific. And then here we go. This is a big one in round 14. So out went Andy Brayshaw. Out went R2. I need to get rid of R2, so he ended up, 214k after I paid 170 odd K for him. Absolutely shocking there. And out went Wardman, so I made right on 100k on Wardman. So again, not enough there. But in came Briggs. Great trade-in. Don't regret that. He really came through for me in the last couple of weeks, which I needed. Langford, yeah, really silly trade-in. At the time, I thought that the role was there, but I knew that other blokes were going to come back into that midfield. Really bad luck. Look, he got injured. A couple of games, he was looking really nice there, but just didn't work out for Langford. Ouch. Really hurt. But this is a big one. Travis Boak now. I've got it written down here. Where have we got? So, yeah, so when I bought Boak in, he gave me 103 for an average. 10 games, that's 1,030 points in total. Now, after I traded Brayshaw out, he actually had 117 for an average, but that was only over 8 games, 937 for his total score after I traded him out. So I was better off by 93 points overall, but a lot of that came down to luck, Brayshaw being suspended. Yeah, it was just a silly sideways trade that I shouldn't have made. And if I had have had that extra trade up my sleeve towards the end of the year, I may not have copped 2 donuts, for example, in round 22. So extremely unfortunate there. At the time, again, it was a little bit fancy. I was looking to get a little bit of a leg up on my competition, given the fact that round 14 was a really tough round for most coaches, and I wanted to get some extra points on field. And I thought, look, Brayshaw, he hasn't been setting the world on fire. He's going to be one of those okay type midfielders, but he's not going to be a top 10 type. But Travis Boak, on the other hand, he was averaging, I think, about 7-8 points more. He wasn't costing me much more to get in. I thought he's at least going to get that one extra game. Yeah, it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it, you know. But it wasn't in the end. But, yeah, unfortunate. So if we look back, you know, I get in Boak, Langford, Briggs, Smith, Newcomb, Whitfield, Bianco, Coleman-Jones, and Josh Kelly during those bye rounds. So, yeah, no uber elites there. No one that was a must-have, I don't think. I could have done a lot better there, and I should have brought in Jack Steele. Too worried about the bye period. So, big lesson learnt, and that's another thing that I've got here about the byes as well, is passing on Steele because of that bye. That really hurt me, because I said to Spills, I said, this bloke is about to absolutely go off. He was at a really cheap price, I think about 560k, but I just passed him up because he didn't have a good bye, and that just absolutely killed me. And, you know, Jelly, Zach Smith types, yeah, just didn't work out too well. Now, this is where I started to go downhill a little bit trade-wise, because Impey got injured, and I thought that he is going to be a keeper. The week before this, so in round 16, must have been in round 15. I didn't trade in round 15 by the looks of it there, but lots of people did trade out Impey, thinking that, oh, look, that average is going down. We don't think he's a keeper anymore. Let's get rid of him. I ended up keeping him, and he had a really good score in round 15. Or it might have been round 14. I forget which round it was. I might be off by a round there, but ended up getting injured, so had to trade him out in round 16. So in came Saunders and Dangerfield. So Dangerfield was a great trade at the time. Jones from Port had to get out. And then round 17. So out Smith, didn't do what I needed him to do. CCJ didn't make the money that I thought he would. I thought he'd go at least 350k, the way that he was looking. Brought Grundy back in. Oh, if only I had have gone to Sean Darcy, that would have changed my season. Would have been a top 150 finish for sure, but it is what it is. Didn't want to go Darcy when he was a little bit unproven still. He was looking good at the time, but I thought, no, I'll go back to the well, go with Brodie Grundy. Yeah, really tapered off towards the end of the season. And then round 18, Langford gets injured. He's out. Got to get rid of him. And in comes Marshall. So that's great. Then I think Marshall plays a game, COVID situation. And then obviously Dusty. Got to get rid of Dusty. And I bring in Jordan Degowee. So again, that was a really good trade. But yeah, it hurts when I'm expecting that players like Dusty, Langford and Martin are probably going to be keepers towards the end of the season or for the rest of the season. But due to their injuries, yeah, there were trades that I just needed to make. And that was really unfortunate and sort of derailed things a little bit because I thought that I would have a couple of extra trades up my sleeve, 3 to 4 even extra trades up my sleeve when I finish the side. But yeah, this will now take me to my lessons learned. And the first one is all about trying to keep faith in the rookies and not going too hard when it comes to my trades. Now, I found that this season in particular was really, really hard for cash gen. Now, usually I rate a trade at about 150k. I reckon that's what a trade's worth. But unfortunately, there were too many occasions where I moved on rookies this year and did not make enough profit. So I've got a little bit of a list here with some rough amounts, well, rough profit figures anyway. So look at Cozzy. So I traded out Cozzy at 141k, profit of about 20k there. And he maxed out at 280k. So I've missed 160k profit there. That's just one trade in itself. So not good enough there when it comes to that cash gen. Campbell at 244k cashed him out. That was only 60k. Only made 50k on Jordan Clark. 120k on Chapman. That was okay. 55k on Brockman. Just didn't make enough there. 94k on Sam Berry. Closer to 100k, a little bit better, but again, nowhere near that 150k that I was looking for. Mansell, only 75k. Highmore, now, as I mentioned, I traded him out at 193,000. That was a profit of 76k. He maxed out at 354k, so I missed out again, similar to Cozzy, on 160k profit. So should have kept the faith with Highmore there. really hurt me. So Murphy I traded out at 197k, only 74k profit, only 40k profit on R2, extremely disappointing again. Waterman 100k profit, Jones 105k, and then Zach Smith around 90 to 95k profit. So just really disappointing there. I did not make enough money from my rookies, and if I look back through my trade history, I usually have trades available, rounds 21 to 23 for my SuperCoach finals, but this year I just didn't. I ran out of trades way too quickly, so that was a big mistake from me. But at the same time, with some of these rookies, you just couldn't afford to hold on to them for too long either. There were times where you just had to move someone on, and at times, there were these players that you didn't want to really move on, but you had to a little bit earlier. So it was one of those situations where it wasn't ideal, but I could have waited a little bit longer. Unfortunately, I didn't. Now for my second lesson, do not skimp on the mids. Now, my starting midfield this year, I had 5 premiums, but 2 of those were DPP players in Laird and Dangerfield. Now, Laird is on his own as a selection, terrific pick, one of the best selections for 2021. But if I had had my time again and selected him in the defensive line, then I probably would have done that. The other bloke I started with in my midfield was Patrick Dangerfield, and we all know how well that turned out. The 3 other blokes that I started there, my 3 premiums that were obviously midfield only, well, Lockie Neal didn't turn out great, the most expensive player in the game, so you can't go against me for skimping there. I certainly splashed out there. Had Clayton Oliver as well, who I kept throughout the remainder of the season, and also Zach Merritt as well. But there is one glaring omission in particular, and that is Jack Mcrae. I got a little bit spooked with what was going on with the Dogs midfield, with Adam Treloar coming in, Dunkley staying. What on earth was going to happen to players like Mcrae? Yeah, that was my bad though. I should have just started with this man, looked at his history, and that should be a lesson in itself. Just start with Jack Mcrae, I've got him down here. So in 2018, average 127, 2019, 123, 2020, 121, and then this year in 2021, we can see there, rounded up to 129. So that should be a lesson in itself. Lock this man in each and every year. History's on his side, and I don't see anything changing, particularly going into 2022. And you'll notice the other glaring omission, obviously, is the lack of Uber premium. So there's no Bont, there's no Jack Steele, there's no Parrish, even someone like a Lyons, there's no Took. That's also really hurt me. I've got Kelly there, I've got Boak there, really underwhelming. And usually I'd also have Rory Laird there. And Laird, as I said, terrific season. But if I had him, for example, in place for May, who's averaged that 90.5, and brought in someone like a Steele, Lyons, etc., then that would have gone a long way to getting me a much better rank. So another lesson learned is do not skimp in the midfield, and make sure you lock in Jack Mcrae. Another lesson I've learned is to trust my gut. Now, I think part of this was the fact that, look, I do run my own channel and I don't want to make silly moves or look silly, but I did have a feeling that Daniel Rich was going to be a really good selection to bring in early on the year, but I thought, look, is it my Brisbane bias? Maybe. Is he going to start to come down again? No, he didn't. He was a terrific selection for us this year. Remained a pod for the whole season, and I should have backed my gut and traded him in. Another bloke was Touk Miller. I was red hot on him before he started to really boost that average up, but I thought, no, well, I look a little bit silly. Can I get him in? I should have. I should have backed my gut. Unfortunately, I didn't. At the time, a massive pod, I think under the 2% range. So, yeah, really missed out on Touk Miller there. There are a few selections around that I just didn't back my gut with that at the end of the day would have been really good trade-ins. So from now on, I've got to remind myself that if I've got a really good feeling about a particular player, back my gut and trade them in. And one of the last lessons I've learnt this year is don't be too hard on yourself. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. It's often like a game of poker. I follow poker pretty closely, and you get those professional players that always seem to be up there around the top rankings in each tournament. But at the same time, you always need a little bit of luck. And I think that's the same as SuperCoach. You see those top coaches that always have those high rankings, but at the same time, they do need a little bit of luck on their side. And I've had some good luck this year, and I've also had some bad luck. But at the end of the day, everything seems to even out. But just quickly, I'll go through some of my bad luck. So either injury trades or long-term suspension. Dangerfield in round 1, Dunkley in round 7, Grundy in 13, Impey in 16, Langford 18, then Dusty 19. Concussions, geez, had Ridley, Dusty, Whitfield, Murphy. They all missed games, as well as Zorko through suspension, Marshall with the COVID situation, Jolly, Seagull, May, Zeeble. Yeah, they all missed games. Just couldn't fit 22 premiums onto my field each week. There was always some sort of a minor or major issue towards the end of the season, but it is what it is at the end of the day. Look, I made some mistakes. Yeah, of course I did. We all do playing this great game, but at the same time, I do think that I made some pretty good moves. But it's really important, however long you've been playing the game, to learn from your mistakes and try to implement new strategies going into the new year of SuperCoach. So for me, as I said, I'm going to make sure that I really try to load up on that midfield. Don't go any players above that sort of 200 to 250 range that I don't think will make at least 150k or be keepers if all things go well. I'm really going to make sure that I take a good look at my ruck situation going into next year. I'm not overly keen on the set and forget like I have been in the past, and I think the rucks next year in particular will really set apart some team strategies. So that should really be exciting in 2022. But yeah, look, apart from that, guys, we've all learnt different lessons. Let me know what your lessons are down there below in the comments section, and hopefully I'll actually learn from mine when I select my team next year. So that's it. 2021 has officially come to an end for SuperCoach. As I did say before, I did want to give a few special thank yous at the end of the video. Firstly, I want to thank my beautiful wife, Lisa, for putting up with all of my SuperCoach nonsense this year. She was a massive help for me preparing and making the stock market videos as well, either calling out names or numbers or typing away madly. So thank you very much, Lise. I really do appreciate it. Time for a bit of a foot massage or something for you. Next person is my right-hand man and my good mate, Spills, Johnny from Spillers SuperCoach. Mate, thanks very much for all the great conversation this year. Obviously, getting the SuperCoach Swordplay up and running, that has been phenomenal, and next year we'll be back bigger and better than ever, mate. So thanks very much, and above all, mate, just really appreciate your friendship and all the great chats that we have. So cheers, Spills. Great season from you as well, buddy. Next one is George. Good on you, mate. Great season from you. Thanks for all the content that you continue to put out. Over the last few years, you've been the absolute YouTube SuperCoach king and continue to do that. So great year from yourself, mate. And also to Enno, your right-hand man. Next one is JD as well. So congrats on a super year, JD. I know that you had double-digit figures at some stage for your rank, mate, and just terrific to not only get to know you, but great to see another terrific SuperCoach channel really starting to take off. Over 1,000 subscribers already, so that shows that you're doing a lot right, mate. So great stuff, JD. Hats off to you as well, buddy. The other guys like Gruffy, Griff, SuperCoach Pro, SC Pod, Billy, great stuff from you as well, fellas. Have really enjoyed your content, and make sure that you come back in 2022 as well. It's been great to see some up-and-coming YouTubers getting on the scene. Next one is a few blokes from Twitter. So first one is SuperCoach Data. Mate, you have done a mountain of work for the community this year. I really appreciate all the data that you present, you know, the live rankings. I found out recently when I was chatting with you about my captaincy ranking for the year. So phenomenal amount of work that you do, mate. Thank you very much. Our next one is Bryce Mitchell. So the price projections, you know, the averages, you do a wonderful job with your work on the numbers, mate. So thank you very much, Brycey. Really appreciate all that you do, mate. And the other one, and I'm sure that I've missed a heap of people here, great bunch of people in the Twitter SuperCoach community, 99% of them are anyway, but it's Adam the Death Adder. So appreciate the fact that you've invited me into that private chat on Twitter this year, mate, with, you know, the overall winner, SuperCoach Mama, people like Kata, all those great people as well on Twitter. So I really do appreciate that, mate. And given the fact you're an old school SuperCoach Talk man and I represent SuperCoach Talk, for anyone that doesn't know, the at SCT is at SuperCoach Talk, because that was the first community that I really got involved with. And it's just a bit of a way to pay respect and pay homage to such a great Supercoach community and people that helped me out when I first started playing the game as well. And apart from that, you know, all of the regular contributors. Now, I know that I won't get close to any of the names here, but what I did was I just went back to the comments section, and there were a few people that had like purple hearts, which were the top commenters on the channel. And look, even if you don't comment on the channel, I still really appreciate everything you do as well. But very quickly, we've got MZ, Daryl Hall, Benny Butts, Cal Meany, John O'Carroll, Andrew, Dan Mashman, Richard, Janeth, Fezzy Mary, Shadow, Look, Parasot, Axfrey, you're the one, came up against you in one of the grannies. I think it might have been the $20 league, mate. So congratulations on your great season as well, mate. Jordan, Dill, Will, Daniel, Jake, Klopp, D-Mac, Az, Jonathan, Julian, aka Crazy Cogs, geez, Crazy Frogs. Sorry, Jules, I called you Adrian, member at the start, mate. So I've butchered your team name. Julian, just to end the season, mate, just to keep everything even. And look, there are so many more names as well. I'm sure that I've forgotten lots and lots of people, and apologies if I have. But look, guys, that is pretty much it for me. As I said, look, best thing for me about Supercoach this year is the new friendships that I've created. I still haven't got back to lots of my Twitter messages. I've just been super busy, as you can tell, probably from the time and day of this upload. It'll be sort of midweek, I guess, by the time I get this done. But yeah, thank you very much again, guys. I really do appreciate all of the support. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for all the lovely words. We've obviously had a bit of a tough time as a family lately, and your kind words and support have meant the absolute world for us. So pre-season, I'll be back. I'll put another couple of videos out in the next week or two, talk about some of my 2022 starting picks. I've basically locked in the side, and shout out to Bryce Mitchell. I've used his price projections in order to put that team together, so that'll be a fair bit of fun. May put my own All-Australian team together, a bit of a Brownlow predictor, might do something for the grand final. But Spills and I'll make sure we do one last final podcast for this season in Supercoach Swordplay, and we'll also get together and do some other random stuff in the off-season together as well. But it is a wrap, guys. Thank you very much for everything again. Hope that you're well. Take care, and I'll see you soon in the next one. Cheers, guys. Congrats on a great year. Bye. Now, just a way of saying thanks for sticking with me all the way to the end, guys. Here's a very quick look at some of the blokes I'll be looking to start with in 2022. There are some padlock symbols there. So you've got in the midfield, for example, Mcrae, Miller, Steele, Oliver. I am absolutely locking these guys in. If I see a good final from Lachie Neale against Melbourne on the weekend, I'll be absolutely locking him in. I'm feeling a really big game coming up. Cogs, I think, will be some value there in the midfield for us. Dacos and Horn, absolutely get these blokes in, I think. Back to the back line, you got Seagull, pretty close to a lock. Dan Rich, mentioned him before on my lessons learnt. Back my gut, go with these pods if you think they're going to be worth it. Sicily, as I mentioned, really cheap. Aaron Hall, I owe this guy. Very likely to be in my team next year. Now, I'm swapping things up a little bit. Maybe Marshall in the ruck as that R1. A little bit risky, I know. Durability, slight concern. Braden Pruce, this is an absolute gamble. We'll see what happens with the GWS ruck setup, but I'll tell you what, it could actually happen. Then onto the forward line, Josh Dunkley, absolute lock for me. If he's available there, I think that he will be. I will consider Jordan Degowee. Consider him, certainly not locked by any stretch of the imagination, but I'll consider him going into next year. Zach Butters, I think he's very close to being a lock. He'll be great value. We know what he's capable of. I think he could be a real breakout selection next year. Now, you could have Marshall probably up forward as well. Maybe lose Degowee, get Marshall up forward and then get a ruckman in. I'm not too sure, but that's the way that I'm looking at the moment. So stepping stones in Horn, Francis, Dacos, possibly Cogs. Undervalued premiums, I think Neil, Sicily, Butters and Degowee for what he's produced in the second half of the season this year. And the 600k club, I'm not skimping whatsoever. Mcrae, Miller, Steele, Oliver and possibly Sean Darcy if I do go for that uber ruck as well. So that is the 2022 starting team as it is right now. I'm sure that there'll be 100 to 200 changes before the start of the season. But thanks again for sticking with me, guys. Take care, and I'll see you soon.